As the United States evacuates non-essential personnel from the Middle East, the burning question is if, or perhaps when, Israel will strike Iran. Well, Nick Stewart, Senior Director of Government Relations at FDD Action, joins us now. Okay, Nick, what is the latest breaking news out of the region?
Yeah, thank you. So a lot has happened over the last 24 hours. What we know is that the State Department's ordered evacuation of non-essential personnel. To what end and why, that remains under speculation right now. I will say that there's been some talk that perhaps this is just, we're messaging to the Iranians ahead of Sunday talks, which we hear are continuing. That is at least the latest. The last time I checked, news is moving fast, but I think the Sunday talks with Iran are still on. There's probably an element of that. This probably is a little bit of messaging, but this is a significant decision, and it's not one that's taken lightly or for purely political or messaging reasons to order civilian evacuations from both Iraq and some countries in the Gulf, Bahrain, Kuwait. So there's something happening, and I think we're entering a new phase of these negotiations. And everybody says we've been negotiating with the Iranians for 6 months. And I challenge us to take a slightly broader view, because the Iranians certainly are. We've been negotiating with the Iranians for 54 months, right? When Biden came in, he largely engaged in quiet diplomacy with the Iranians for 4 years. And we really picked up where he left off in a way, which is fine. I give President Trump credit for continuing if we can solve this diplomatically, that's everybody's preference. And I give him credit for trying. But I think now, after 54 months of talks, something's changing. There is a change in the region, and these evacuations the ordered evacuations are an indication that we are entering a different phase.
Okay, so what is that phase? So if it's not just, hey, this is a message, come back to the table, let's talk, what could the other side of this message mean? Why is the United States doing this to all their embassies and personnel in the region?
Yeah, I would suspect. So I had worked at the State Department in the first Trump administration, which is why I have some insight into when and how these type of decisions are made. And they're typically made in response to a threat, right? And so that is the threat impending Israeli strikes on Iran's nuclear program? Perhaps. We're speculating, and I hate to speculate, but we don't really know. The 2-month deadline that President Trump gave the Iranians is up. 5 rounds of talks have already happened. We're on to the 6th, and it's unclear that Iran has budged at all. And in fact, I'd say they haven't budged. They've doubled down. And so the president's request, the president's demand has been no enrichment. And just this week, we've seen indications that the Iranians are actually beginning to enrich in a new hardened facility, right? So they are not only saying, Mr. President, we reject the premise. They are saying, we reject the premise, and we're actually going to do exactly what you don't want us to do, but do it in a more secret, secure facility. So that, I think, is a cause for alarm from both the United States and the Israelis. And I think that may be why you're seeing a slight shift in the dynamic here, following the censure, which we can talk about too this week at the IAEA.
Yeah, so with CBN News, one of my main beats is covering all things Israel, and a lot of my contacts, a lot of just mainstream news outlets like the Jerusalem Post, Times of Israel, everyone's saying like, oh my gosh, like this is it. Like I have friends who are stocking up on supplies. Everyone that I've talked to feels like this isn't a if, this is a when, and they also feel like this isn't a weeks, this is a days. So do you, well, again, not to speculate, but what would it mean? What would happen to the region? And again, I guess this is speculation, but what would happen if Israel were to attack Iran? How would that reshape the Middle East?
I'm somewhat reluctant to play out this hypothetical because it could go in any number of ways. And I think the big question at the front end is, what targets do we strike? Is it a narrow strike on a certain number of nuclear facilities? Is it broader to not only hit the nuclear facilities, but also to hit some strategic military facilities to prevent Iran's retaliation? I think any number of things could happen, and what Iran's response would depend on what those were. And look, it would put Iran in a very difficult position. We have to zoom out and realize after a series of Israeli strikes, Iran's air defenses are already battered. It has been there was this image of Iran built up in our minds for so long that we couldn't touch it. It was a too formidable opponent to even contemplate strategic strikes on targeted nuclear facilities. The Israeli strikes, they really demonstrated Iran to be a bit more of a paper tiger than we thought. And so Iran feels this sense of vulnerability as well. And that certainly factors into how they would view any retaliation. But beyond that, I hate to speculate on what they may or may not do.
So to my friend watching, obviously keep it right here on CBN News. We will keep you up to date on this this very quickly escalating situation. But as for now, Nick, I appreciate your time, my friend.
Thank you very much for having me.